Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Single Muslim Live here on British Muslim TV, sponsored by SingleMuslim.com. I'm Fahima Mohammed, your host and relationship coach. I'm really happy to have you all joining us and tuning in today from wherever you are streaming, whether it's live on Sky Channel 752, Facebook or Twitter. A really warm welcome from all of us here on British Muslim TV. And I want to also remind you that you can join in the conversation tonight on 01924231083 by calling in directly to us. But do not forget that you have to ask the bill payer's permission, as standard network rates do apply. Also, you have the option of messaging me for free on our WhatsApp service, and that number is 07585835150. So I really look forward to hearing some of your thoughts tonight. We are going to be discussing struggles of maintaining relationships after children. Now, this is something that I really wanted to discuss for a very long time. And I think it's something so essential to all of us regarding relationships. We talk about, two people, spouses. But unfortunately, it does not only mean that. Over time, the most important thing after two people getting together is starting a family. And what an exciting moment that is. And of course, when we are starting a family and when we do want to start a family, we just think of all the wonderful things that it actually entails. And of course it is, and it's a blessing. We can't forget that it is a blessing. But more importantly, we have to know the reality of this. Now, what is the reality? The reality is that is such a struggle and a challenge, not just for the mum, but for also the relationship. And no one really talks about this. No one talks about the challenges. No one talks about the struggles. No one talks about how it can really impact your actual relationship. Now, of course, if you are married young, you may want to wait a bit longer before you have kids, and that could also work to your benefit. But other people who may decide, or just in their destiny where they've married a lot older in life, then they may feel that they want to go into having a family a lot quicker. Now, there is never an actual timeline, which is right, which is not right. But when you are actually entering into a relationship, you do need time with each other first to figure things out, because that's when you really get to know each other. And if you're going to bring children into the picture, sometimes if you don't know your partner that well, then it may not be the right thing for your relationship straight away. But we don't actually have that choice a lot of the time either. So it's something that we really need to consider when it comes to relationships. When we want to have children, the timing of that, are we ever really ready? Do we really ever know? Because even when you talk to parents, having the first one can be quite challenging. Having the second one is a totally different experience, just as challenging, but even more at ease. And if you wait a bit longer, you are more stable in that relationship. And sometimes when you straight away get married, a lot of people do find themselves in a situation where they have children very early on. What does that mean? And what about the age of the couple? If they're married so young and they felt like they didn't have time, what does that even mean for that relationship years later? Okay, you grow old with your children and you stay young with them at the same time. But with that, again, still comes all the overwhelmment and the anxiety and so much stress that can come with it. And does it really mean, especially in our culture, that it's really up to just the mum? Did you know that a lot of men will lose automatically testosterone? In neuroscience, we learned this, that as soon as they become a father, they actually also have a biological change. So as much as you might think it only affects the mother, we are the only ones that go through certain things and changes, because it's us that is bringing someone into this world. We're going through all the physical changes and the hormonal changes. No, it actually also refers to a man. So we need to learn this so we can understand that they may handle things differently, but they're also going through changes in their body, even if they're not the ones that is actually going to be giving birth. So a lot of these things we need to learn about. And when it comes to children, are we ready for that in our relationship? We have the honeymoon period. Even in the first year of marriage, we hear so many stories about the fact that It is so difficult when you're trying to get to know each other on a serious note, because now you finish the courting stages, you finish the entire family get-togethers of the engagement and the wedding. And then when you settle down, even if you went away for a while, that's not going to last more than a couple of weeks, month at the maximum, if you're lucky. But when you come home and you settle with a brand new person with their own habits, their own ways, and how do you mesh with that? Now, that again is another area that nobody understands. And two people that even have all the questions answered at the end of the day, we don't really know that when you're living with someone, it is so different, right? When you're living with someone, it's absolutely, in a different way altogether. But the thing is, what we need to understand is in life, when we are thinking of having children, there is a responsibility, there is a commitment now, not just between you and your spouse, but with that child. And are you mentally, physically, and emotionally ready? As soon as you get married, we also get the pressures from family when it comes to when are you having a child? Is that even fair to put that pressure on when a couple has just decided to be together, completely strangers most of the time, right? Even if they are, friends from a long time or you've known them, when you live with someone, it's so different. So we need to consider all of these things in order to make sure that at the end of the day, we are going to bring a new life into this world, and it does change your relationship. And a lot of times, it's not necessarily that we are ready for this change. Now, with me talking about this all the way from the other side of the world, and I'm so happy to have him tonight as he's going to be, giving us some tips around the struggles of maintaining relationships after having children. We have Farhan Ahmed. Assalamu alaikum, Farhan. I can't really hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now I can. How
All
are you?
right.
Perfect.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you for having me. I know we were having some
Yes,
technical
finally
difficulties.
we are here. I have been
Yeah.
waiting for this episode. It's taken a while, but I'm so happy. Where are you streaming from tonight, by the way?
Streaming from Chicago, Illinois, the
Amazing. I
US
really do
US.
appreciate your time. Honestly, it's been long coming. Now, I was just giving a little bit of an, introduction to this because at the end of the day, I feel that a lot of questions come and arise through this. So before I go into it, just, for the audience, could you just maybe tell us a little bit about yourself, and then
Yeah.
we can take the question on a little bit more deeper.
I appreciate that. So my name is Farhan Ahmed. I'm a licensed clinical professional counselor. I've been doing this for about 10 plus years. Alhamdulillah, I've been married for almost 14 years now. I got married when I was 20 and I'm 33, turning 34 pretty soon. So, and I started up a organization called Ihsan Coaching, and we help people throughout the US and in the world. Alhamdulillah. So we have a team of myself and six others, and we're all licensed therapists as well.
Amazing, amazing. Honestly, it's been an absolute pleasure to even know you and actually have you part of my sort of network, and more importantly, to have you on the show, because I know that your content is it's really valuable. And you know what, we need to hear this tonight. Now, obviously when we are getting married, we sort of automatically think that having children just comes naturally, and we just kind of glide into that sort of role, but we don't even glide into the role of actually being a spouse, let alone mothers and fathers. Now, how would you prepare a couple for children? Do you think they need to be prepared? Because a lot of times there's a lot of pressure as soon as people get married, especially in our community, that you need to have children straight away. From your experience, what do you think are some of the challenges that comes across that you would say, okay, if I was to go back and advise a couple who's just newly married, regardless of age or the time they've been together, do they need to wait a certain amount of time before they do
Yeah.
have children? Or, do they need to get to know each other, the honeymoon period, all of these things? What would be your sort of top, 3 to 5 things that people need to consider before they have children?
Yeah, definitely. Before they consider even take it back before they even get married, right? I mean, I always say first you got to know yourself. What is it that you're looking for as a person? Who are you? and what is it that you're looking for? Because, a lot of people, they don't know themselves, right? And then they jump into a relationship and then they figure out, well, yeah, that's not the type of person I'm looking for. And then that affects them because every single time that you get into a relationship, what happens is that you get affected by that person, whether negatively or positively. And then, if you try getting into another relationship, and we're talking about like, getting engaged or something, then, you're constantly comparing the person that you're with the person that you were previously with, right? So it's
Mhm.
this constant comparison that happens. Now, when you're looking to get married, I always tell people is that you should have 3 to 5 things that you should say, okay, these are my absolute make it or break it. And if this person does not have that, then I'm not even going forward. Now, I don't think personally that, there's a age that when a person should get married. I got
Mhm.
married when I was 20. I know people
Yeah.
that got married like younger than me. I know people that got married older than me. So, I mean, it's really about maturity and if the
Yes.
person is ready because, we both know people that are probably in their 30s and they're not mature at all,
Mm.
right? And so I really believe that, you have to look at a lot of different factors before you get married, and these are certain things that I would say first, you got to know yourself, right? You got to know what you're looking for. And then afterwards, when you find somebody, I think that, you don't need that much communication. Like, I'm not saying like, okay, just meet them one time and that's it. But I always tell people personally, you know, after 5 times of meeting a person, you should know if that's the right one for you or not. Because if you have a 1 hour conversation with somebody for 5 times, you kind of get to know them, their personality, how they are, like and you get to know like what their likes are and dislikes are. Usually what happens afterwards is that people, they get into that, hey, how are you doing? How was your day? What's going on? And the
It's
lines just
really
blurred
interesting
after
that
that.
you say that, Farhan. That's really interesting that you say that. But we are coming on to a quick break. And
Okay.
we're gonna pick up on that very quickly because I think it's very interesting that you say that that communication, even though it's key from a lot of people, but you're saying that we actually need less of it if you know exactly what you're talking about. So we're definitely going to pick
Yeah.
up on that. Make sure you
Okay.
stay with me as we're going to continue and dive straight into this conversation a lot deeper. Make sure you stay tuned, and we will see you after a very short break. Take care. Salam. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Single Muslim Live here on British Muslim TV, sponsored by SingleMuslim.com. Really, really happy today to have my guest all the way from Chicago, Farhan. Tell me so much about, this whole idea of having children. A lot of us really don't consider it. We don't think that there are any challenges, and the challenge is not just about having children, it's what the impact is on your actual relationship. And I know you mentioned before the break that getting married, there's no real age to it. People struggle at any age. It's all about maturity. I completely second that and agree with that. But the thing is, when you are getting married, there is still a phase that two people need to get to know each other, I believe personally, before they decide. I know we can't plan everything, but at the same
Yeah.
time, if you are conscious and if you are making certain decisions for marriage and you know that having children is inevitable, maybe that should also be part of the conversation when you are getting married, is also children, which a lot of people don't discuss. All they think about is,
Yeah.
oh, I want 3, 4, 5 girls, boys. But the whole idea and the responsibility of it is really so much more. And and nowadays, the responsibility is not just on the one partner. You do find a lot of men having to also pull their weight a little bit more, especially in this day and age. So there's a lot around it. Now, what are the struggles of maintaining a relationship after having children? From what you've seen around your clientele or your peers around you, what are the struggles? Is it after the first one? Is it after the second one? Is it the fact that they're not getting time with each other? What is the actual struggle?
Yeah. So Dr. John Gottman, who's the leading marital therapist in the world, he talks about how there's life stressors, right? That happen after a person gets married. And one of life's biggest stressors is children. Yes, they're a beauty, right? They're beautiful. I have 3 myself, alhamdulillah. But, they change the dynamic of the relationship, and now you have to readjust. See, couples when they get married, they're so used to a certain lifestyle because they have, they could get up and go out, they could do
Mm.
whatever they want, sleep at a certain time. But once you have a child, that changes the whole dynamic of the relationship. And now it's that readjustment period. You know, let's be honest, you can't be as intimate as you once were because you have to worry about the baby maybe sleeping on the same bed as you or getting
Mhm.
up in the middle of the night, or you can't just do random things that you once used to do. So I think, we always talk about expectations. What is your expectations from your spouse? What do you want? See, when I always start off with how I see you guys are, I think, on the third or fourth generation in England and the UK of Muslims or,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
something.
yeah,
We're in the first generation, right? So
right.
I'm first generation, and so our parents, most of our parents here in the US, the mothers never worked, right? The fathers
Mm.
worked, the mothers didn't. So there was a clear expectation that the mother, they take care of the household, they do all of the, take care of the kids and all of the stuff, where the husband, he goes out and earns. So there's clear expectations. But now, because a lot of women are working, and there's nothing wrong with that, but now that expectations is blurred. So we have to be very clear cut of what is it that you're expecting. Do you want 50-50? Do you want the husband to chip in, or do you expect the wife to be more traditional, right? So all of these things come into play, and we have to talk about it beforehand. And if you don't talk about it beforehand, that's when the problems arise. And especially when it comes to children, are you expecting, like, I have a friend right now who is like the house husband, who
Mhm.
takes care of everything, takes care of the kids, his wife works, and you know what? It works for them. So what I
Yes.
always tell people is like, look, I understand according to fiqh, there's a baseline, right, of what needs to be done. But fiqh is, is comes into play when rights are not being fulfilled. Now, if the woman wants to work and the husband's fine with that, then who are we to say what's right or wrong, right? It should be based upon the couple, whatever works for them. The Prophet ﷺ, what was Khadija radiallahu anha? She was the one that was providing, right? She was the businesswoman. So, I mean, it's for every single person to decide what they want, but I always tell people that you should not be afraid to say what you want, right? If whether
Uh,
you're a man or whether you're a woman, and let your partner decide if that's what they're okay with or not. If you want that more traditional lifestyle, then there's nothing wrong with it. If you don't, that's fine as well.
I know that even what you're saying is 100% with regards to every household has their own sort of situation. And, we're talking about sort of, very rare situations. And obviously it's ever increasing where you do get the house husbands and, they're fine with it and it's absolutely fine. But then
Yeah,
even when it comes to faith and there are clear gender roles, even science nowadays do say that, the main caregiver from birth to a certain age is really the mother that will take
yeah,
care. You can't really argue with that no matter what. And even
yeah,
if a woman wants to have a career, she can take a break. She can, do all of these things and put her time into her child because that investment is the best investment for your future. And more importantly, I have got so many clients of myself who are women who maybe decided in the first time that they would, go to work early and send their kids from the age of maybe 1.5, 2, or even 6 months to daycare. And they've had a lot of issues with that child's upbringing. And second time
yeah,
around, they'll do it differently. So this is the reality, whether you like it or not. We're not saying that women should not work or
yeah,
cannot work. But when certain life situations happens, there is a priority. And I'm sorry, when you're a parent having children, the priority is your child. Because even if you make all the money in the world and do whatever you want, if your household is not in that sort of space that you need it to be, then only, that work is worth it. So I'm saying it even louder than you because I know that a lot of men might get stick for it, but I don't care if they're going to come at me because I'm telling it to the women out there.
yeah.
As much as I am
I
the
love the way I
women.
love this, right? Because the problem is today I see a lot of men, they're afraid to say these kind of things
Yes,
because they're being labeled misogynistic, right? Or they're being
exactly.
labeled as, backwards and stuff. So I
Mhm.
mean, like I've seen a lot of my clients that I work with, they're so hesitant to tell their future spouse when they do premarital exactly what they're expecting from their future wife. And then I tell them, I'm like, no, you have to be open and real about it because, you're not going to be happy. There's going to be resentment later on and animosity. And then, they're like, oh, and then I see their facial expressions change and then they start opening it up. And I'm glad that, you're speaking
No,
out and
because
just
see,
saying what
they
you
don't
believe.
actually understand. They don't understand what is a child's need. That's the
Yeah.
problem, right? It's all about what I need and what I feel and what society says. So I'm saying, I'm sorry, I put the child first, whether it's after divorce, whether it's, before, getting married and you're deciding to have children, then, the child always comes first. And if that is your prime responsibility, because you are accountable, even Islamically, for bringing up children in this world, not just the numbers and not having so many girls and boys, so it looks good in the family and your culture, but raising them in a particular way, then
Yeah.
that is on you. That onus is on you, right? And those first
Yeah.
year is your influence. I don't care how many hours they spend in school, they are mimicking you, right? So whoever
Yeah.
takes care is going to be the one. So I'm really happy about this topic, and I'm so glad that you're on here. And I told you that we break boundaries and we talk what we need to talk, and we're
Let's
not
do
pushing
it.
it carpet. So what are the case studies that you have right now that you can sort of say, like, you know what, this is the norm that's happening right now, regardless of the generation? Do you feel that people are really not geared up to be parents? Because I think it's a skill personally, and we're not talking
Yeah.
about it.
Well, I mean, I don't think a lot of people are ready, nor are they been like talked to about what it takes to be a parent, right? I do think that people are trying, like reading books and everything, but you could read as many books as you want. But when you actually have a child, you have to understand that child and understand that every single child that you have has a different personality, and what works for one child is not going to work for the other, right? So, I mean, it's very difficult, and we're seeing, like kids are observational learners. So what you do is what they're going to see and how they're going to act, right? And what they're going to mimic, like you said. So, we have to be like the example for our children.
Mm,
And, it's, a lot of people, they might want a child, or, they actually, research shows that people are having less children, right? Because they
yes.
want to live their own lives now and they want to be able to do things that they want to do, whereas maybe our parents had a bigger families and it was more about the family structure. So, I mean, I think a lot of children are going astray because there's lack of family structure within the
Mhm.
house, and parents are not actually putting in that effort and giving that time. I tell parents this all the time. Each child you should be giving 5 minutes a day minimum by
Mm,
themselves, right? Because
absolutely.
that's how I mean, and even 5 minutes is less, but let's be realistic here. At least 5 minutes, let's give to each child, talk to them about their day, and spend time with them and see how things progress, right? Umar radiallahu anhu, he said something. He said, actually, sorry, it was Ali radiallahu anhu. He said that for the first 7 years of a child's life, you play with them. The
Yes.
second seven, you do the tarbiyah. After that, you become their best friend.
Yes.
How many of us are actually doing that?
No, we
That's a
don't have the
question that we
skill.
have to reflect
Yeah,
upon.
we don't even have the skill in the first place, to be honest. And that too, we are sending it out to strangers to look after them, even in the first stages, when that
Yeah.
is the most influential.
I mean, I find it sad that, a lot of people have to send their children to me so that I could talk to their child, right?
Yeah,
Because
when they should be.
they don't have that connection, and if for me, like, if I had I understand that's my job and, I could connect with children, but it's like, I want to teach you the skills to be able to connect with your own child so that your child feels comfortable to come to you and talk about whatever it is they're going through in life. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to have go through problems. We did as well when we were younger, but you can't chastise them. You got to guide them. You got to be their friend. You got to help them, right? But a lot of parents, they can't do that, right? As soon as they hear something negative about their child, they either berate them, they hit them, they do something. They can't have their child open up to them. And then what happens when their child becomes older, they don't want anything to do with them, right? And I
Definitely.
find that very, sad.
No, it is very sad. And you know what? We've actually hit a lot of points right now. We are coming up to our second break. Please do, rewind if you have just joined us. We have actually pointed quite a few things, but I'm still going to go even deeper into the topic with Farhan after the break. Make sure you stay tuned. We do have the numbers at the bottom of our screen if you missed it at the beginning at 01924231083. Please do ask the bill payer's permission before calling in, as you will be charged the standard network rate. We also have our WhatsApp service at 07585835150 if you want to send in any of your questions and queries, and I will read them out even anonymously to my guest to answer. Now,
Yeah.
again, this topic is really, really interesting because of the fact that, we are not just here about relationships between spouses, because, a relationship is about family. And when you are raising children, it is really, really challenging. And we're going to come back to it as to how that really does impact the relationship, and certain tips that you can actually use so that we can actually have much better, fruitful households and units. Now, please do stay with me. Do not go away. We are going to be back and you are going to be taking notes. I will see you in a few moments, inshallah. See you shortly. Take care. Salam. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Single Muslim Live here on British Muslim TV, sponsored by SingleMuslim.com. And we're here with Farhan all the way from Chicago, talking about the struggles of maintaining a relationship after having children. Now, this is something I really always wanted to talk about, and it's so prevalent. People don't really want to say it because they feel guilty to say that, now they've got children in the world, and they feel guilty if they are going to even complain about the struggles. But there is real issues around, maintaining that spark in that relationship. Do you think the struggle is just for the women, or is it also, a man feels it too? What's your perspective on that? And how do they even create that space to continue that spark in that relationship when a mother may feel guilty to leave her child, even if she's got supportive, family members or whatever? I mean, sometimes, women are guilty of that. And then it can be like months and years go by and then not actually had sort of like a date night with their partner. And then they wonder
Yeah.
why things went wrong. So what is your suggestion, Farhan?
Yeah, I don't think it's just women. I've seen a lot of my friends and a lot of guys that they feel guilty leaving their children with their parents, saying that, oh, my parents are elderly. I don't feel right to leave them. And I say that, why not? Like they used to do that with you, like, so why are you feeling guilty nowadays leaving your child with them? That's what family is for, right? We shouldn't feel guilty of leaving our child with their grandparents, right? I mean, you want them to form that relationship. And having a healthy relationship with your spouse is so important. When you're not getting time with your spouse, you're drifting apart. And then you see people like they're not getting that time with them, they're not spending it. Then they get into all sorts of things. They either get on apps and start messaging the opposite gender, they start indulging in pornography, they start watching illicit things on TV, right? Because they're not getting that time with their spouse. And I always tell people you need to keep that spark alive. Date nights are very important. If you can't do it weekly, at least do it bi-weekly, or at least minimum once a month. There's nothing wrong, and you shouldn't feel like that you shouldn't feel guilty at all, right? I mean, go out for a vacation, go out for like a night. You're married. Why? People get married to have fun, right? They don't get, and that's the problem. It's like now it just become very boring nowadays. So that's how I say make marriage fun again, right? How do we make marriage fun again? Play games with each other. Aisha radiallahu anha and Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they would race, right? He was very intimate with her. He would put his lips where her lips were. He would put his head in her lap. Why are we not doing all of these things? I never saw my parents, for instance, sit next to each other, right? I tell people that
Yes.
that's not what our deen teaches us. There's nothing wrong with that. So much so that when a couple holds hands, sins are falling down. Minor sins are being released, right? So, I mean, if this is all in the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, then why are we not implementing that? There's nothing wrong with being intimate, calling your wife beautiful, calling your husband handsome, sexy, all these things. I mean, you're a married couple, right? We're not saying to do this out in front of the public or anything, like call each other all these names, but it's okay to flirt with your spouse, spice it up a little bit, keep each other excited.
Absolutely. And I think it works both ways for men to make that effort as well as women. And even if they don't
Yeah,
have to go out when the baby's asleep, set up some candles, a romantic night, and have that time with each other. There's so
Yeah.
much that you can do to improvise. And I think the whole idea of even the intimacy, it's the emotional intimacy and obviously the physical intimacy still needs to be maintained and continued, especially after having children. And maybe a lot of women may use that as an excuse because they're tired, and
Well,
it's a genuine thing.
yeah.
But
So intimacy does not just start in the bedroom. That's what I
yes,
tell people. It starts in the morning, right? When you wake up, you send a nice text. You give your spouse a kiss before you leave to work or whatever. Throughout the afternoon, you say, I miss you. You come back, you do something nice for each other, right? It builds up. It's just not like a light switch where it's like you just flip on and off. You have to
exactly.
build up that excitement. Just like I mean, and this might be the bad example, but like, when a guy first talks to a girl, when they're not married or anything, they get so excited, right? It's like, oh my God, I'm talking to somebody and that spark is there. It's just like that. You have to build it up, that anticipation, and then that's how you get excited. But I also have to say, if both couples are working, you
Hmm.
cannot use I'm tired as an excuse.
Yeah.
Right? Because that happens too often. I get it genuinely that we might get tired. We might be a little bit stressed, kids and everything. But when there's a lack of intimacy in the relationship, what happens, like I mentioned, is that they're growing apart. And think about it on their first night when a couple gets married, right? They have intimacy for the first time. How that relationship goes from 0 to 100 automatically, right? And now, if I hear this all the time, that couples are not even intimate for months. And I'm
Yes.
just thinking, like, you're not getting your core needs met. If you're not getting your core needs met, of course, that's when people are going to get upset and angry, and all of these like little things are
They
going to
move
add up.
outside their marriage.
Yeah, and they're going outside. Infidelity, I mean, I can't tell you how many couples I get that come in and it's because of infidelity reasons, right?
Yeah.
That somebody stepped out of the relationship because they're not getting the core needs met inside of it, so they looked outside of it, right? And now that's why I tell couples, it's like, you have to understand, for a guy, I get it, it's more physical. For a woman, it's more emotional. So men have to be more emotional, women have to be more physical, right? And so,
Absolutely. No, I love what you're saying. And I think it's really important that we do touch on this because, intimacy is something that, does bring that spark. It does make it very much, you creating that friendship and relationship again. And even though you've gone and you've had children, I know at the beginning it is quite difficult. And like you said, you're tired. I don't look at that as an excuse because if there was a football game, if there was some sort of wedding, that mother will have her dress ironed and she'll be ready to go. That father will be there ready to go. It's because the urgency is there. So you need to create that urgency in your relationship for each other. And sometimes
yeah,
we become complacent and we don't look at each other as an urgent need to provide that sort of like comfort for each other.
yeah.
And I really
So
think that and believe that.
you mentioned friendship, and I think that's so important. The key to a marriage is a friendship, right?
Mhm.
And there's three ways to develop that friendship. The first is you have to the first aspect is developing your love maps. What is a love map? It's a compartment in your brain where you store all this information about your spouse, what they like, what they dislike, what makes them tip, what makes them happy, and etc. Right? And that's so important because in order to love somebody, you need to know that person. Right. And that's why they always say, like, how can you love the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam if you don't know him? So you need to know your spouse. And then that's how you show that, yes, this is how I love you. So developing your love map is the first thing. The second thing is fondness and admiration. Why is fondness and admiration so important? Because it's the antidote for contempt. It's the antidote for lack of respect in a relationship. See, what happens a lot of times is that over the course of the relationship, we start losing respect for our spouses because we start thinking like they're not capable of things, they're not, living up to what we liked and our expectations. But when we say these nice things, words of fondness and admiration, it reminds us what value that person brings into our life and why is it that I married that person. And then it allows our spouse to realize that, okay, like my husband or my wife recognizes these things within me, and I will keep doing those, right? And the last thing is we need to turn towards each other and not away from each other. What does
Mhm.
that mean? is that when I'm saying something to you, you're responding back. You're not just ignoring me. And by building up the friendship, this is how we work on conflict resolution, right? People try doing things backwards. They want to work on conflict resolution first, which never works. Think about the people you're closest with and why you have such a good relationship with them, because you value them, you're friends with them, you're willing to overlook certain things that they do, right? But if we don't have a friendship with your spouse, that's why we harp on every little thing that they do. We get upset with them. We can't see goodness within them. And that's why couples constantly fight, right? And there's a lack of, wanting to spend time with each other.
Absolutely. The mercy and the love is just not there. And the other thing I want to ask you is that obviously when, even when you want to create intimacy, friendship, relationship, spark, even after having children, obviously it needs two people wanting it. But you
Yeah.
do find that when there is a struggle, there is one person that's lacking for whatever reason. They're not motivated enough, or they've had enough of their partner. So what do you do in that case? And do you just stay for the children? Is that a
No.
healthy move?
You never just stay for the children, right? I mean, that's not healthy for anybody because, see, if you're not fulfilling each other's rights, what are you going to do? First of all, you're not fulfilling the rights of Allah, right? And you're going to be sinning as well because you can't fulfill the rights of the person that you're living with. And when you're not getting your rights fulfilled, you're not going to be happy. And then you're going to create like a dysfunction within the household. How is that healthy for our kids? It's actually better that you end up divorced. The child, like you guys are happier separated, and now the child, they at least could, they could readjust, right? Children, very smart, mashallah. They could readjust and they could, adjust to their situation. So I never tell parents stay just for the child because everybody deserves to live as well. The Sahabas got divorced as well. There's nothing wrong with that. But obviously, we should try harder to making our marriages work. And I do believe that if you go to the right person, right, and work on it, then yes, your marriage can actually thrive. I've, alhamdulillah, helped many couples from the brink of divorce, and now they're thriving in their relationships, right? Because there's a certain method. Like I always tell people, you cannot first work on conflict resolution without a friendship. It does not work. And that's
Mhm.
what the problem is. Most people is working on the conflict resolution, and then they're like, yeah, I don't like this person and it's not working, and that's why I want to get divorced. So I do think that, it has to be that you don't stay in a relationship just for the kids, but we have to do more as well, trying to make our marriages work because there's no guarantee that the next marriage will work. And I want to throw a statistic out there. There's to prove this point, right? Because there's not a lot of research based upon Muslims, but non-Muslims here in the US. So the
Even
non-Muslim
here,
divorce
it's the
rate
same.
is like 45%, right?
Yeah,
So if they get divorced once and remarried, guess what the divorce rate jumps up to?
it's even more. I know it's the same here.
60,
Yeah,
60%.
yeah,
And
yeah,
then they have a higher chance of getting divorced again and remarried, 70%. So what does
yeah.
that show you right there? It's that, there's no guarantee that the next marriage is going to work, right?
Absolutely.
So I always tell people, is like, look, if you want to get divorced, but first try working on your marriage and putting an honest effort. And there's three things you need to do in order to put an honest effort. Number one is you have to take the dawa, the medicine, right? And the medicine is what we talk about. And you have to implement that. The second thing is dua. You have to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to put muhabba and muwadda in your relationship and rahmah, right? ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين وجعلنا للمتقين إماما, and all the other du'as. And the last thing is taqwa. Why taqwa? Because even if my spouse is not fulfilling my rights, I'm still answerable to Allah to fulfill your rights, right? So
Excellent.
I have to do my job because when I'm in my grave, I can't tell Allah, yeah, I didn't do it because they didn't do their rights, right? I can't, that's not an acceptable answer. So I always give this example of the tortoise and the hare, because we always heard about the tortoise and the hare when we were children. Who was
Yes.
winning at the beginning? The hare, right? The hare was winning. It was, killing the tortoise, and they thought they were going to win. But who ended up winning? The tortoise. Because
Yes.
see, as long as you do your job and you keep doing it, inshallah, your spouse will eventually catch up and they might even surpass you. But if you give up early, then guess what? They will never catch up. They would no everybody would just give up. So you got to keep doing your job and inshallah making dua to Allah that your spouse also, puts in the effort and they will eventually catch up as well. So we should be hopeful people. We shouldn't be pessimistic.
No, I think you've given some real gems there. And I love the fact that you related everything back to the deen, because I think that's what we also miss and we lack in our marriage,
Yeah.
is looking at these examples. And even, we think we're living in the West, we're in this kind of like new
Yeah.
era, and we need to change with that, when actually all of it is
You know,
simple.
See, the thing was, I didn't really grow up religious. So what you see right here, I didn't grow up in a religious household, right? But through college, I became more religious and it all made sense to me. My parents are very like liberal, right? And just studying the deen, I studied 3 years at the alim course, and my brother's a mufti, alhamdulillah. It just started to make sense to me of how much like Western psychology will only take you to so far, but the deen will take you to ihsan, right? And so you need to implement the two together, and there was a something I saw on Facebook recently where it's like you see a pyramid, right? And you see the husband and wife over here, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is at the top. Now, the closer the couple gets to the top, close to Allah, the closer they become. The further they are from Allah, the further they become, right?
Yeah.
So I've seen, I mean, like, I'm very up to date with what's happening in the pop world and the culture and pop culture and everything like that because, that's how we grew up, right? So, and I seen how all these relationships, when the people they got married or when they were in a
We're going to come
relationship.
back to you on that.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we are coming on to a break. And you know what? I can listen to you for another hour, but we do have some time after the break. And inshallah, we will pick up from where we left off and we will be back with much more conversation. Please join us. Stay with us. Do not go away as we are getting real deep right now. Make sure that you stay with us and we will see you after our very short break. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Single Muslim Live here on British Muslim TV, sponsored by SingleMuslim.com. If you just tuned in, I really do advise you to please rewind, take note, and go back and watch again. But we are at the last part of the show, and I really want to make sure that I get as much information from Farhan, who is all the way from Chicago tonight. Now, if there is a couple that's struggling out there because they've got children and they just need some practical tips, what would be your top tips to sort of advise them? And also at the end of it, please do share, where can people reach you? Because I know you've got so much information and content, and I really don't want to go away where people can't reach you after the show. So please do share your details first and then answer the question, please.
Okay, so you can follow us on Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, right? Ihsan Coaching, IHSAN Coaching, COACHING. You could go on our website, ihsancoaching.com as well. We have all social media platforms, and we pump out a lot of content on there, alhamdulillah. So please do follow us and see what we're up to. We're going from city to city here in the US, trying to let people know about our organization and just give back to the Muslim community, right? So please do follow us. Now, when it comes to like the top tips that I would say is for a Muslim couple to do, I would say that number one, make sure that for every single day, for 5 to 10 minutes a day, right? 5 to 10 minutes a day, you face your spouse and you have a conversation with them. You should not talk about children. You should not talk about problems. You should not talk about anything that's going to get you guys upset. Talk about fun things. Talk about something that you enjoy, whether it's that show, whether it's, Quranic ayah, whatever it is, right? Something that you really like in life and that you're excited about, talk about that. Why? Because you want to start up a conversation. And if you cannot do it, you stare at each other for 5 minutes, right? And then eventually, hopefully, that conversation will start happening. So that's the first thing. Afterwards, what you do after that 5 to 10 minutes is that you say something nice about the other person, which you really admire about them. Say, I admire blank about you. And if you forget, like if you can't come up with adjectives, Google it, right? Because eventually what you need to do is be able to say this naturally. And you want your spouse to hear something nice that you you think about them, and because then it excites them more. So those are two practical things. Now, the other thing is date nights, right?
Mm.
Date nights are very important. Make sure you at least do minimum once a month. You should be able to go out with your spouse, do something fun with them. And then also, I mean, this is kind of sad, but sometimes we tell people to schedule intimacy. If you have to schedule it like a doctor's
You have to
appointment, you got to
schedule
do
it.
what you got to do. But, make it more natural, right? Like it's nothing wrong with making the moves on your spouse, right? Whether you're a female or male, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made that person permissible and halal for you. So, do what you need to do, excite your partner. There's nothing wrong. You actually get rewarded for having intimacy, right? So I'm going to leave it at those four things. What a person could do is number one, face your spouse like we're facing, like, how you speak to somebody, and like your chest to their chest, eye contact, speak to them for 5-10 minutes, not about problems, not about kids, not about issues, right? Number two, fondness and admiration, say something nice about them. Number three, date nights. Number four, make sure you prioritize intimacy.
I think those are very, very amazing top tips. But what if you don't even like that person? I mean, how do you quickly resolve those kind of resolutions? I know we've only got a couple of minutes, but we've got to be realistic because sometimes we don't even like them, even if we love them.
Yeah, I mean that you see that often, like a lot of elderly couples, they're probably just in it for the sake of just like, they're like, man, I don't have many years left in my life. Let me just be with this person. I mean, look, if there's in social psychology, there's a concept that the more times that you meet a person, the more times that you're going to like them. So, yes, I understand that you have a lot of animosity and resentment. So maybe work with somebody on why you have the animosity and resentment and what you could do about it, and then also speak to, like, try getting marital coaching, marital therapy, whatever it is, and try working it out, whatever those problems are. you know Learn, like, okay, what can we do, like, be proactive about it. You know what, there's no reason to be an unhappy marriage because you're only hurting yourself at the end of the day. So take those steps that you can to figure it out. Okay, how can I make this better? And you'll probably find out, okay, after I work through the resentment and everything, there's still good within this person. There's something in there that we could work upon, and we have a foundation and base, and we could move forward with. So, maybe first working individually and then working with your spouse, inshallah.
Oh, I love that. I absolutely love that. I just want to thank you so much for coming on and giving us your time. Please do follow Farhan Ahmed on Ihsan Coaching, whether it's on Instagram, Facebook, or their website, TikTok. I do see their content and it's really, really valuable. And we need more role models like yourself who is in a marriage, have been married young. You know a lot about, today's culture and, and at the same
Yeah.
time, you can really motivate and be a role model to the youth of today, as well as any couple
Oh,
and individual struggling. So I just want to thank you so much for giving us your time and your insights. And I know it's just the surface that we discussed. So please do give Farhan a follow and you will get so much more information if you require. Thank you so much, Farhan, for tonight.
thank you
Really
for having me. I really appreciate it.
that was my pleasure.
Been
And
a great
again,
host.
definitely it was a great conversation. I really enjoyed it. You another hour, but inshallah, we will have another episode next week, same time, same place. Thank you all for watching. It's been an pleasure. And inshallah, we will be back next week with another topic and guest. Please do stay tuned. We love all your comments and queries and questions. I do read them on Facebook. Please keep them coming. And I really appreciate it. Again, have a lovely night and we will see you next week. Take care. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.